Putin thought he could hide his weapons pipeline on the other side of the planet, 6,000 kilometers from the front lines, deep in the frozen wastes of Siberia. He was dead wrong. Ukraine now claims to have pulled off one of the most audacious sabotage operations of this entire war, detonating a Russian military train allegedly loaded with North Korean ballistic missiles and artillery shells, burning Kim Jong-un's deadly gifts before they ever reached the battlefield. If the claim holds up, the single artery feeding Kim's weapons straight into the Kremlin's war machine is now a smoldering wreck. And Putin just got a very expensive lesson that no distance on this planet is far enough to hide from Ukraine. According to Ukrainian sources, the operation targeted a section of the Trans-Siberian Railway, the longest single rail system on the planet, stretching 9,288 kilometers from Moscow all the way to Vladivostok and crossing 8 separate time zones. That railway isn't just a passenger line either. It's Russia's only real east-to-west military freight corridor. And a branch of it called the Trans-Manchurian Railroad splits off after Lake Baikal and runs straight into Pyongyang, making the whole line the physical pipeline carrying North Korean weapons into Russia. Sources cited by analyst Kirill Sazonov claim the sabotage used remotely controlled explosives placed directly beneath the tracks detonated the moment the train passed overhead. The reported cargo was a mix of North Korean KN-23 and KN-24 short-range ballistic missiles, alongside wagons of artillery ammunition, all bound for Russian forces. Ukrainian intelligence sources allegedly claim the resulting blast triggered secondary detonations inside the missile warheads themselves, describing as complete destruction of the local logistics hub, with fires spreading into the surrounding forest afterward. However, there's been no public confirmation from Ukraine's own military intelligence agency, HUR, and Russia hasn't acknowledged the incident at all. While that single operation remains unconfirmed, the broader military relationship it targeted is very much real and well documented. A North Korean missile unit has begun deploying into Russia's Voronezh region, made up of roughly 90 North Korean personnel, potentially equipped with up to 120 ballistic missiles and 6 launchers aimed specifically at Ukraine. 40 of those missiles have already been delivered, and at least 2 were fired in a deadly strike on Ukraine in early August. President Zelensky revised his own estimate of the scale of this partnership on August 9th, stating Russia has decided to bring in between 30,000 and 50,000 North Korean soldiers, an increase from the 30,000 figure he'd cited just weeks earlier. That number carries real weight once you look at what happened to the first wave. Of the roughly 15,000 North Korean troops originally sent to fight in Kursk back in 2024, South Korea's own National Intelligence Service estimates around 2,000 have already been killed, with roughly 9,500 troops still stationed in Kursk today, though no longer directly engaged in active combat operations. The relationship goes well beyond troops and missiles alone. A Reuters analysis tracking Russian-flagged cargo ships found 4 separate vessels made 64 total voyages to North Korea's Rajan port between September 2023 and March 2025, hauling close to 16,000 containers of ammunition back to Russia. Ukrainian military intelligence separately confirmed North Korea has delivered around 4 million artillery shells since mid-2023, not even counting mortar rounds, covering roughly half of everything Russia currently needs to keep its front lines supplied. By the start of 2025, Pyongyang had also delivered 148 KN-23 and KN-24 ballistic missiles, with deliveries continuing on into this year. None of this is happening informally either. Putin and Kim Jong-un signed a formal strategic partnership treaty during Putin's visit to Pyongyang back in June 2024, one that includes a mutual defense clause if either country faces outside aggression. North Korea has framed its involvement publicly as simple loyalty to a treaty partner, with Kim describing the troop deployments as an exercise of North Korea's own sovereign right to defend what he called a brother nation. What North Korea is actually getting out of this arrangement matters just as much as what it's giving. Its soldiers are gaining direct combat exposure to drones, electronic warfare, and modern artillery coordination they'd never experience otherwise, while Pyongyang's own weapons designers get to study how their missiles and ammunition perform under genuine wartime conditions. In return, North Korea is receiving hard currency, oil, broader economic support, and access to Russian military technology it wouldn't otherwise be able to reach. Zelensky put the danger in blunt terms, warning that every missile and soldier Russia uses teaches North Korea to correct its own weaknesses, meaning the real long-term risk lands on Japan, South Korea, the Philippines, and other countries across the region once that experience gets applied elsewhere. Zelensky went even further, declaring, "This is the first time in Russia's history that it no longer has a secure strategic rear." For the first time, Russia cannot wage war without reinforcements from North Korea. Whether you agree with Zelensky or not, the latest evidence points in the same direction. On the night of August 11th, Russian forces fired North Korean KN-23 and KN-24 ballistic missiles directly at Zaporizhia, combining them in the same mixed strike with Russia's own Zircon hypersonic missiles. That deadly strike killed 6 civilians, injured 19 more, and left rescuers searching through collapsed buildings for people trapped beneath the rubble. That pairing matters because Russia simply cannot manufacture enough ballistic missiles on its own to launch a salvo of up to 100 units in a single night, which means North Korean supplies are now directly filling a gap in Russia's own strategic strike capacity. These missiles aren't especially precise either, and that imprecision has a documented history. Under ideal conditions, North Korean ballistic missiles can still drift as far as 200 meters off target. The first time Russia actually used them in combat, some missiles missed by as much as 1 kilometer, an error significant enough that Russia reportedly paused deployment for a stretch while suspected modernization work was carried out. The Institute for the Study of War has confirmed the strategic logic behind tolerating that kind of inaccuracy anyway. Every missile Russia fires at Ukraine effectively doubles as a live field test for Pyongyang, feeding real-world data back to North Korean engineers, working to correct exactly these kinds of trajectory errors. There's an odd irony buried inside the hardware itself, too. As reported by Lyudmila Pokrovchuk, roughly 75% of the electronic components found inside Russian missiles striking Ukrainian territory are American-made, a detail that shows just how much Western technology continues flowing into Russia's war effort, despite years of sanctions meant to stop exactly that. What's coming next is where this story takes a much darker turn for Ukrainian cities. Ukrainian drone commander Robert Brovdy, known by the call sign Magyar, has warned that Russia's next major missile wave could be 2.5 times larger than anything launched so far, potentially reaching close to 200 missiles in a single strike. Russia is reportedly preparing a broader campaign specifically aimed at Kyiv's energy infrastructure in the coming weeks, leaning on this expanded North Korean missile stockpile to sustain a pace of attacks its own domestic factories simply cannot produce alone. The political calculation sitting underneath all of this matters just as much as the missiles themselves. Bringing in up to 50,000 North Korean troops lets Putin keep pressure on Ukraine's front lines, without ever having to announce another politically painful round of domestic mobilization at home, a move he's spent years trying to avoid. For Kim Jong-un, the payoff runs in the opposite direction. This partnership gives North Korea real independence from China, reducing Beijing's leverage over Pyongyang while opening the door to Russian technology transfers aimed specifically at upgrading North Korea's air defense systems, anti-aircraft missiles, and electronic warfare capabilities, a genuine leap forward for its military. North Korea's isolation actually works in its favor here too. Because Pyongyang is already cut off from most of the world diplomatically, deepening ties with Russia carries far less political risk for Kim than a similar move would carry for a country like Belarus, which still has to worry about relationships the rest of Europe hasn't already severed. The Telegraph described the entire arrangement bluntly, calling it an increasingly close alignment of interests between two regimes, with North Korean support functioning as a long-awaited relief for Putin's military machine after years of sustained strain. And that brings this entire story back around to where it started. That claimed strike thousands of kilometers from Ukraine's own front line represents Kyiv's most direct attempt yet to choke off North Korean weapons at their actual source, before missiles like the ones fired at Zaporizhia ever get the chance to reach a launch pad at all. While missiles and troops move across one border, an entirely different kind of North Korean presence has quietly shown up inside Russia's own economy, and it starts with a company most Russians use every single day. Now here is where this story takes an unexpected turn. Before we reveal what happened next, do us a favor, hit that like button and subscribe to the Frontline Show. We are the only channel exposing every move Russia makes. Trust us, you do not want to miss what is coming. Back in April 2025, Wildberries came under scrutiny after videos began circulating from its Electrostal warehouse near Moscow, showing women dressed in the company's signature purple uniforms. Independent Russian outlet RTVI reported that the women were likely North Korean nationals, raising questions about whether the company had begun recruiting workers from North Korea. RTVI reported that hundreds of North Korean workers had reportedly been imported to work at that single facility alone. Wildberries never fully denied it either. The company confirmed it was running what it called a pilot project to hire foreign workers, without confirming or denying their nationality, stating only that it complied with the necessary requirements for employees from abroad and would decide on scaling the program based on how the pilot performed. That wasn't the first hint of this arrangement either. Back in February 2025, separate local reporting claimed around 100 North Korean women had already signed 3-year contracts and were training at a different Wildberries warehouse in Ryazan. North Korean laborers were also independently confirmed working construction in Vladivostok on Russia's far eastern coast. A researcher who studies North Korea's overseas labor system, Chris Monday at Dongseo University, reviewed the footage and assessed it as genuine, noting something specific about why this arrangement suits Pyongyang so well. He explained, "Unlike Central Asian migrant workers, North Koreans sent abroad have no intention of staying. They keep their heads down, finish their contracts, and go home." Which makes Wildberries' isolated warehouse conditions, where workers rarely interact with Russians at all, exactly the kind of setup that serves Pyongyang's interests. This entire arrangement sits directly against international law, too. A 2017 United Nations Security Council resolution explicitly bans member states from hiring North Korean workers abroad, and a follow-up resolution in December 2019 demanded every North Korean worker be repatriated by the end of that year. Russia simply refused. Moscow's own foreign ministry argued in 2020 that transportation restrictions made repatriation difficult, an explanation that conveniently ignored the UN mandate entirely. Putin himself criticized the labor ban publicly in 2024, arguing it was strange to bar people from working when they need to feed their families. The numbers around how Russia has actually gotten around that ban are almost brazen. South Korea's National Intelligence Service confirmed North Korea sent thousands of laborers into Russia in 2024 using student visas as cover. Russia's own foreign ministry data shows 35,849 of the 36,413 total visas issued to North Korean citizens that year were specifically student visas. Yet Russia's education ministry claims only 130 North Korean students were actually enrolled at any Russian university, a gap that exposes the visa category as little more than a paperwork trick. More recent reporting has widened the picture well beyond one company's warehouses. Some of the North Korean workers later told the BBC that they were treated like slaves. Their days began at 6 a.m. and often did not end until 2 a.m. with just 2 days off a year. They were kept under constant surveillance by agents from North Korea's State Security Department, beaten for trying to rest, and forced to live in filthy shipping containers infested with bedbugs or on the floors of unfinished buildings. Most of the wages they earned never reached them. Instead, Pyongyang confiscated the overwhelming majority of their hard currency earnings and redirected the money into the regime's budget and its weapons programs. Investigators have also found North Korean civilian laborers embedded inside Russian drone manufacturing facilities, not just retail warehouses, meaning this labor pipeline now directly supports Russia's military production as well as its consumer economy. Wildberries alone employs more than 5% of Russia's entire domestic workforce, which makes this labor shortage, driven by mass military mobilization pulling Russian men to the front and mass emigration pushing others to flee conscription entirely, a genuinely systemic problem the company is trying to plug, with exactly the kind of workers the UN explicitly banned. There's a bitter postscript to this particular thread too. The same Electrostal warehouse where those North Korean workers were originally filmed became a target itself, destroyed months later during Ukraine's drone campaign against Wildberries facilities in July 2026. Back on the military side, the location Russia chose for its new North Korean missile unit tells its own story. Voronezh sits roughly 300 kilometers from the Ukrainian border, close enough to put Ukrainian cities well within range of the missiles stationed there, but also close enough to sit squarely inside Ukraine's own strike zone. As reported by Andriy Chernyak of Ukraine's main Directorate of Intelligence, the unit is being folded directly into Russia's existing 112th Missile Brigade, meaning North Korean personnel are now operating inside Russia's own established chain of command rather than functioning as a separate standalone force. Voronezh wasn't chosen by accident either. It already functions as one of Russia's most important tactical aviation hubs. The region hosts Borisoglepsk Air Base, home to Su-34 and Su-35 fighter jets, a facility Ukrainian drones have already struck twice, once in July 2025 and again in July 2026, the second time triggering fires on site. A separate Russian airbase in the same region, sometimes referred to as Baltimore, was hit by Ukrainian drones back in May 2026, specifically targeting the unit flying Su-34 strike aircraft there. Ukraine had already been striking economic targets in Voronezh well before any of this, hitting ethanol plants in the region as far back as October 2024, establishing the area as a long-standing deep strike target years before North Korean missiles ever arrived. Ukraine's own foreign minister, Andriy Sybiha, has already settled the legal questions surrounding this deployment on Ukraine's terms, stating explicitly that any North Korean missile systems based inside Russia count as legitimate targets for Ukrainian strikes. While Russia was quietly moving North Korean missile crews toward Voronezh, Ukraine's president wasn't just watching from the sidelines. Zelensky authorized a specific new target set inside that same push. Deep strikes aimed directly at the facilities in Voronezh, where those incoming North Korean units are actually being assembled and prepared, hitting the problem before it ever reaches the front line at all. Zelensky didn't stop at strikes either. He personally confirmed something that hadn't been publicly established before, that Ukrainian forces have physically recovered North Korean missile debris on Ukrainian soil itself. He said, "We have already found North Korean missiles on the territory of Ukraine. Today, this is an established fact." At the same time, Zelensky unveiled another idea altogether, a drone deal with Seoul. He confirmed, "We are ready to work on the drone deal and other areas as well," adding that Ukrainian diplomats were already in direct contact with South Korean officials to move the proposal forward. While Kyiv was looking to deepen its partnership with South Korea, North Korea was revealing just how deeply it had become involved on Russia's side. North Korea has stopped hiding the human cost of this partnership too, and it did so in the most public way possible. In April 2026, Pyongyang opened a memorial museum of combat feats for overseas military operations, attended personally by Kim Jong-un and Russia's defense minister Andrei Belousov, who read out a personal message of gratitude from Putin himself. A BBC investigation later analyzed satellite imagery and close-up state media photos of the memorial's walls, counting individual engraved names arranged across 16 columns spanning 9 separate sections, landing on an estimate of somewhere between 2,288 and 2,304 individual names, every one of them tied to North Korea's only active foreign deployment, meaning every name almost certainly represents a death from the war in Ukraine specifically. That confirmed death toll is still likely only part of the real picture. South Korea's own intelligence service and Western assessments estimate total North Korean casualties, including wounded, actually exceed 6,000, out of an original deployment of somewhere between 11,000 and 14,000 troops, putting the casualty rate at somewhere between 40 and 55% of the entire original force, an extraordinarily high attrition rate by any modern military standard. For months, both Pyongyang and Moscow flatly denied the deployment ever happened at all, which makes the shift toward lavish public ceremonies honoring these same soldiers as noble heroes a complete reversal of the original official story. Analysts studying North Korea describe this memorial as something far more calculated than simple grief or propaganda. By publicly logging these deaths and building housing for grieving families back home, Kim Jong-un is deliberately documenting what one analysis called a blood debt, a running tally designed to lock the Kremlin into long-term obligations, ensuring North Korea keeps receiving advanced military technology, food, and economic aid as direct payment for every soldier it loses. The memorial itself doubles as a trophy case, too, displaying captured American and German-made military equipment recovered from the battlefield, framed as proof of a shared victory against Western-backed Ukrainian forces. That blood debt Kim is building with Moscow isn't staying contained inside Russia's own borders either, and neither is the recklessness fueling it. The same Kremlin willing to trade advanced military technology for North Korean bodies is the one testing NATO's actual limits in the skies over Eastern Europe, and we covered exactly that in our last video. Romania finally stopped absorbing Russian drone incursions quietly and started shooting them down. 3 drones in 3 days, a direct answer to a pattern Putin assumed NATO would never actually confront. If today's story showed you how far Moscow is willing to go to keep this war fed with North Korean weapons and manpower, that video shows you exactly what happens when the country on the receiving end of Russia's provocations decides it's finally had enough. That video is right here, and it's the piece of this story you don't want to miss. This is the Frontline Show, and this war is moving faster than almost anyone is prepared for. We'll see you in the next one.